Thank you. So it's safe to say the pandemic has changed the way we all work. Let's take this event, for example. An event like this would never be available virtually. Now we're here with you guys all in this room, but thousands of you online around the world.
Exactly. The way we communicate has evolved, and with that comes a whole range of complexities we need to navigate in order to stay both effective and efficient.
Along with some industry leaders, we welcome TourRadar COO Nico Trieb to discuss how the industry has coped with these complexities and look to the future to figure out, now what?
Thank you, Brendan and Kaitlyn. Let's get the panelists in here as well right away. So this year, we've seen obviously how travel has completely picked up again. While at the same time, though, we've had to deal with a lot of different working environments. So today we'll discuss how do you cope with these different working environments, and what are some challenges that you had, and what are the technical solutions that can help kind of with the efficiencies that come along with it. Joining me today, we have Leigh Barnes, coming all the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Thanks for having me.
He's your Chief Customer Officer at Untitled Travel, probably one of the largest small group adventure operators in the world. One of the early adopters of the TourRadar platform, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I remember having the app on the Facebook page about 13, 15 years ago, so definitely, yeah. I've aged as TourRadar's age, hence my grey hairs, but yeah.
Awesome. And then we have Boele. He's a VP Solutions Engineer at Twilio. Twilio is probably the largest global technology solutions provider around anything communication. We've integrated with Twilio about 8 years ago, and our entire contact system is based off of the Twilio infrastructure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So before we get started, we want to make this as engaging as possible. We want also the audience online to ask questions to the panelists, and at the very end, we'll have Alberto, who's sitting there. Maybe raise your hand quickly. He'll be answering the questions. You will be asking the questions.
Make it easy for us if you
might
can answer
them
as well.
Yeah. And we'll be asking them directly the panelists as well. So if you have any questions throughout the session, please write them in the chat on the right sidebar, and we'll try to get them to the panelists at the end of it. Awesome. So to start off, post-pandemic, we've seen companies have the ability to choose kind of between the different working environments. Facebook famously took the remote route and wanted to kind of have more offer the remote working environment and allow the people work from home. Google has taken a bit more of a hybrid approach. They've taken a 3-day work week where they force them into the office, so to speak. And then people like Elon Musk famously said, if you want to work remotely, you can pretend to work somewhere else, taking a bit harder route. Leigh, maybe first to you. What has Intrepid chosen, and why did you take that route?
Well, first off, we had no idea what we were doing at the start, obviously. We were like in the office, out of the office, left foot, right foot, hokey pokey all over the shop. But for us, we've definitely taken a cocktail approach where it's been a different mix. We've got offices in over 30 different locations, with people from 5 people in one location to upwards over 100. And it's not always going to work by each culture in each country. Yeah, so we've really tailored it to be very flexible depending on the market. So I was recently just in Marrakesh, where one of our largest DMCs is based. And they have a flexible policy, but about 90% of the staff are coming in 4 days a week. Yeah. Melbourne, Australia, flexible policy again, it's up to the individual. We're probably seeing about 80% of our workforce coming in 2 days a week. So it's very different by market, and we're trying to provide our staff the flexibility and empowerment, the adults, to be able to do the best work they can. So we've really focused it around flexibility, tailoring it and by a market so the people that work there are able to take control of their own destiny. It's not always possible. You know, in a lot of countries we see specifically, we know in India, Peru, they prefer coming into the office and they want that flexibility and that ability to be able to come in and work from the office. But we're also seeing great benefits from flexibility insofar as we're being able to hire people in different parts of the US, Australia, so they don't have to come in. So our approach has been very hybrid. We joke it's like a cocktail, a little bit of mix of this, mix of that, and still make a delicious Negroni at the end of the day. Like everything else, some things work, some things don't. Don't think that just by going one approach, when we're all in the office, there was heaps of stuff that we hated. I sure as hell hated some heaps of stuff, you know, like, anyway, I won't go into what I hated. But anyway, there was always problems regardless. So we've gone very much on a flexible approach, about empowering our people and let them take control of what they're able to do. So no Elon Musk quotes from me.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. So Thomas, as I understand, you actually back in 1997 already wrote your thesis on teleworking, probably a time where remote working was unheard of. Twilio with 7,000, I think, employees worldwide. More than that now.
More than 9,000.
What approach have you taken, and how have they embraced the remote working environment?
I think the technology is there, as you mentioned, since the late 90s. So I think it's certainly not an issue to do this. And of course, if you deal with customers, if you work as a knowledge worker, usually you should work there where you are the most productive and you've got the best environment. So I think that was already clear at that time. I decided in my thesis that the alternating approach is the best one, because of course you need to deal with people, you need to have this docking process when you go into a company. Of course you need to work with your peers. At Twilio, we had a wonderful office culture. I think our office in San Francisco is just marvelous. Of course, the same in London or Munich or other places where we have offices. In March 2020, we decided to go fully remote. Of course, a couple of people had to come to keep servers running, other things, but it worked extremely well. Company has been extremely successful. And we started reopening offices second half last year with a couple of policies. And we have realized there are things which are going to stay because people like this hybrid approach. I think if you ever try to find a room in San Francisco, it's quite expensive, and people have realized that you get larger houses outside of the Bay Area. So we have certainly a lot of people moving out. Here in Europe, I think Germany is pretty much used to the federal approach that we have distributed people. So I think that's fine. Of course, this gives me more degrees of freedom in hiring. In London, we still have a very good office culture, but people now work where they want to work, and we have developed into a remote-first company.
Okay, great. Maybe to both of you then, what were the biggest challenges that you face in like a remote environment, and how do you solve some of those challenges?
You want to start? Or?
Oh, sure, yeah, I'll start. So, like I said before, heaps of challenges. I think the main one we used to joke, it was almost like COVID was the death of banter. And one of the things we all got lost was just those ridiculous conversations that we have, which are almost like social glue, and how you go about, getting to solutions through humor, through sadness, through challenges and conversations. So that initially was the hardest. And, we all tried to do, I think, Friday drinks online, and they were fun and then became extremely painful after a period. But the challenge really has been around, how we're all more efficient. I think the number one win from it has been more efficiencies. Yeah, we get through more work, we're able to do online, sit at our computers, power through tasks. We're less human, and that's been the big challenge, right? So how we've been able to get that part back in. Similar to your point, different offices. Our London office is still packed. They're really showing the way, and they've got that great connection. But then in North America and Australia, that human connection's been really hard. And so we've been trying to do things like, I know it all sounds rudimentary, but do walking meetings, catch up, go meet people, do those things, bring people in for 2 or 1 day conferences where you come in, have drinks, do those basic things where you get that connection. But I think that whole human thing is the thing that we struggle with the most. We are a human-centric company. We send people away on trips, and we are, predominantly a lot of people, work in a tour operator. So that has been the hardest challenge for us, is how to have that human banter, talking, connection, and what solutions we can put in place for that.
Okay.
So, from our perspective, technically, it hasn't been a challenge because we're prepared for it. Of course, we build the technologies, and of course, we are usually road warriors. So I think that's working fine. I think the details are interesting. As a manager, of course, you need to hire people who are self-sufficient and who can work from everywhere. Of course, I'm personally not a micromanager because I hate to be micromanaged, so I should do the same with my people. That's certainly a mental thing for some managers, to let go and to trust the people and not think about I have to control my people all the time. That's one thing. The other thing certainly is I hired more than half of my team during the pandemic, which means how do you do this docking process, which I was mentioning initially? How do you give the people a good feeling that they land inside the company, that they have buddies around who support them on doing their daily business and understand the secrets of Twilio in this case? We managed to do this, of course, for a time being. We officially were not allowed to see each other. So you said, okay, I'm sitting at this point in time at this coffee. If you pass by, I will pay the bill. But of course, don't feel obliged. So I think you know what I mean. So you needed to find some way to really keep the connections. Of course, you need to be careful about things like Zoom fatigue and other things. Another thing which, of course, I had to think about is I have a lot of space at home. So for me, I've got my own office. For people who are living in London or in other places where you just have one room, maybe a family, that's a real challenge because if you have a small kid, if you, of course, want to have private life, and I think that should be private life after work, that's something where you need to take care of. You need to maybe give the people an option to find something else or to have additional degrees of freedom in order where they can work, and of course provide some equipment and give some budget so that people can buy things, because in a lot of cases I've got a lot of really young people on the team. They love to come to the office. Of course, some amenities were moving away, and of course you needed to find ways to still make it work for them so that they're not exhausted. The other thing, and I think that's a special responsibility for managers, is to really make sure that work is not 24/7. There's always a tendency of people for self-exploitation if they work remotely, because they think, oh, I need to work extra more because I'm not in the office, nobody sees me working. So you need to make sure that at this point in time, switch off your notebook, put it away, do something else. I think that's something like extra care you have to do as a manager in order to make sure that people are not burning out.
Yeah, one thing I keep hearing about now is how people are trying to do 2 jobs at the same time while they work remotely. So instead of just getting paid 1 salary, they actually get paid 2 salaries. Is that something that you have realized?
It's hard enough to keep one job. I don't know how yeah, look, you hear these stories about it. I think that's one of those things the press love to write about. I'm sure there's edge cases. Good luck to you. If you want to do 2 jobs, great. Go make it happen. We try and move to an output workplace where it isn't about the hours, it's about the quality of the work. I'm sure there's someone at our company, don't tell my boss, but that is probably trying to punch 2 jobs. But we hope that's not the norm, and we don't manage for that edge case, do you know what I mean? And we just trust our people. We get positives of that, and surely there's some negatives, but good luck. If anyone knows how to do 2 jobs at once and collect those salaries, let me know. I'm super interested. That'd be great to know.
All right. So now one thing that really helped us was actually our Twilio contact center that we have implemented. We built this browser plugin, so the entire plugin is utilized within the browser, and that allowed us to basically scale our contact center and our customer support team across our different offices previously, and then when the remote mandate came in with the pandemic, it was very easy to shift and move. Everybody was able to work at home. So, how does Twilio, and that's mainly due to the offerings of Twilio. So how do you see that Twilio is kind of helping shape this remote working environment?
So I think what made me click on Twilio is this sentence that making communications a software thing. I think that's certainly the major theme for us, to make things as easy as possible. And of course, if you look at the different technologies in the past, coming back to my thesis, you needed to have a lot of hardware to do things. Now, of course, things get easier because everything is integrated in software. Of course, we have a lot of developments in terms of standards like WebRTC. Of course, the security-savvy people amongst us can start debating, but it's a very easy technology. You just use a Chrome browser and you have everything in there, so you don't need to have extra systems. So technology helps a lot. Of course, on the other side, we always should think about, of course, I'm a techie, but I have to tell you, technology is a crutch. It helps you making things work. So I think that's something, we shouldn't do things for the sake of technology. We just should look at this as additional degrees of freedom. So when you talk about a contact center, of course, people dial in. The preferences of people have changed over time. So people like to come in via a chat. They want to use the means which is most appropriate for their current request, and they want to be served. And of course, if you look at a contact center, it should be able to deal with the different channels and make sure that people can be serviced. And of course, it should be as easy as possible for the companies who want to use it. The other thing is, of course, there's a lot of ready-made solutions on the market, but they are bloated because they have to cover 1,000 different use cases, and you only have 2 of those. Why would you have pay for 998 other ones when you don't need them? So you should be able to build the things by yourself or build this with the help of a partner if you're not so deep into development. So I think that's very important. Use the technology which helps you and the users which you usually want to address. And the other thing is having bidirectional communication. So maybe, have you ever tried to answer on SMS? Usually you don't get anything back, or please call this number. So you should be able to pick up something and continue it on a different channel. Same with us. I've got my mobile phone with me. I've got an iPad. I've got a notebook. I start a transaction on one device, and I'm coming home and I want to pick up the transaction on something else. So you need to have a set of technologies which makes this work.
So Leigh, what are some of the communication lines that you have with your customers, and what are the channels that you guys prefer, and what were some of the technical challenges that you faced with the different working environments?
Yeah, it was first off making sure everyone had the internet when we first moved. That was probably the biggest just functional change, and have the hardware to deal with it. But majority of our customers come through phone, email, or live chat. Biggest change we saw through the pandemic was just an absolute spike in live chat. That increased, 100-fold all the time, and just the complexity of seeing more service-based questions. So the actual inquiry completely changed. Yeah, way more question coming through. So live chat for us has been the biggest shift in how we communicate with our customers. We have shifted a hell of a lot of our email comms now to automated. Yeah, majority of our traffic and revenue from emails now comes from automated AI emails. We manage through that process. That's been a big shift. They weren't even part of our marketing mix pre-pandemic. So for us, the 2 biggest changes, I'd say, pre and post, one is live chat, just explosion. For every sort of question, that anything possible, whatever you can imagine they've asked on live chat, good and bad, that's exploded. And the other bigger change is that how we communicate via email. So moving from that blast approach to one-to-one automated emails, going out and having that communication platform.
Okay. And Thomas, maybe more from an industry-wide, how have you seen a shift pre and post pandemic around the different communication channels? Which ones are more popular, and which ones are being utilized more? Different age groups in different countries, maybe.
I think one thing which is certainly very important is everyone is talking about digital transformation. I think the pandemic was a big catalytic converter for that. So we have seen on average acceleration in some industry areas of 7.2 years. So from that perspective, it was very helpful. As said, there are different channels. We see, of course, way more chat. And then, of course, it depends on the age of the user. It depends on the market segment, where the people are coming in. Even inside a single country, people, for instance, in one part of the country prefer to use voice. Others prefer, of course, usually over the major cities where you have a younger population, they prefer WhatsApp or other messengers. If you look at text message, it still has an opening rate of way north of 80%. So I think that's something which is a very efficient means of communications. I guess in Austria, you're completely spoiled. You're the test market for all the mobile providers. You will have 5G connection in every single small valley. Of course, I always was envying you on that. So I think in Germany and other countries as well, SMS is part of a flat rate. You don't even think about the cost. But if you go into other parts of the world, in Middle East, in LATAM, SMS is insanely expensive. So people prefer, for instance, WhatsApp as a medium. Even in countries, when we look at the Levant or North Africa, other areas, access to some data sources is restricted, or someone is listening in. This means that in those cases, email is a tool which is widely used because there's not a lot of restrictions on this. So I think it really depends on the part of the world and the communications preferences, which are certainly driven by price. The same for you as a user of the services. You have to think twice, okay, what kind of channel will I use? Because in the end of the day, I need to make some money out of this.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important one. You think like over time there's more homogenization with the customer, but each customer is basically getting more and more specialized. Like if we get a booking from an iPad, it's 100% a baby boomer.
Yeah.
Like unless a 19-year-old picked up their nan's iPad and made the booking, you're seeing like less, like all devices created equal. It is changing based on customer and market, and I think that's a really important delineation. It's not just one solution for all.
No.
It's what's the customer in that country, and the country and market forces will drive what tech needs to be delivered. You know, we see when we first went into China, it's a completely different platform. Yeah, you can't go with the same stuff, and you see it with, you know, people 18 to 24 are just not using iPads, or there's just those complexities there. And I think that's the best driver. Is you said before, don't just have technology as the crux. Like, what's the actual problem for the customer, and that is I think the nugget around what solutions you're going to use.
It should be a seamless experience. I think it's all about this customer experience, and this should be as easy as possible. And of course, it changes over the journey. And depends, if I have a support request, I can send a message because I can wait and do something else aside. But if I have something really urgent, traveler in trouble, I guess he wants to have someone on the line as soon as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you remember from the session earlier, Leah and Cher were highlighting, how quickly the industry rebounded, and I think all of us were not really prepared, and we didn't really know, when travel was going to rebound and how quickly it was going to be, and we were pretty much understaffed. And we, for example, had, I think, over 50%, missed call rates that we had to deal with during that time. So what we did is we kind of tried to deflect the phone calls down to live chats because it's a bit more efficient. But then we also had to move to more of a chatbot functionality to get it more automated and deflect some of the questions and gain some efficiencies. How was it for you in Trieb? You mentioned you had a drastic increase in live chat, and did you also see the phone system going? And how did you deal with the understaffed situation?
Yeah, well, we were super prepared, and then bloody Omicron hit, and then we were like underprepared, and then overprepared again, and then underprepared. So, like everyone, it was an absolute roller coaster. We've had to do all sorts of deflection, prioritize sales calls. We had to prioritize refunds at a certain point at the pinnacle of COVID. So we've done a number of different deflections where we've brought people into different components and pushed them to other parts of the website for particular pieces of information. The biggest shift that we're moving towards, and the area that I think we're starting at, and I think it's the most opportunity, is using AI and knowledge base for simple live chat inquiries. Yeah, instead of having to have full teams that are saying, what's the weather like in Marrakesh in August? It's actually on our website, and there's a way to serve that. So the biggest deflection, and again, if you went to our live chat, it may not be perfect, 100% get that, but I think the biggest shift and the most exciting one, given the explosion of live chat and deflection and all that, will be how we use all the information on our website to automate it to give it to a customer, because it already sits there. And at the moment, that's probably the biggest drain. I think if we all took our top 100 questions, they'd be pretty bloody close, So how do we take that information, and it's all on our sites written in different ways, and hopefully we've all not used robots to make that content as the SEO class that you showed us earlier. We haven't done that, but there is a certain simplicity in the amount of questions. When's the best time to go? Do I need a passport? X, Y, Z, That is probably the biggest opportunity. We said you want to serve your customer, you want to be able to give them that information as fast as possible, but at the moment it's too human driven, and where we're really looking at how we pull that information using knowledge base and FAQs to those live chats, because for us that's been the biggest explosion and the biggest pinch point.
Okay. How about on your side, Thomas? How would you?
I think we see a lot of requests or demand for deflection cases. Of course, the important piece is you need to keep the ball rolling. If you call somewhere in, and of course you don't want to wait forever in a holding pattern. Interesting thing is, if you even use the wrong music, people are more likely to jump off the line. So deflection, even in the voice or chat area, is something which is normal. Of course, we offer any solution which is on the market can be connected to our systems. It always depends on the use case, the languages you have to serve, and I think this will determine the platform which you are using. And of course, if you have specific cases, you want to have specifically trained models in order to make sure that the journey is really delightful for the users. Of course, the easiest thing I think you're using this as well, in your system is building up an IVR, and I think any one of us here in the room can do this in a few minutes. Of course, an IVR should be should be very simple. Of course, you shouldn't have too many menu options over there, otherwise it gets boring.
Can you explain what IVR is?
It's interactive voice response, which means you dial someone in, press 1 for this, press 2 for support, press 3 for being connected to an agent. That's something which is very easy to implement. Of course, it should be simple. And then, of course, AI kicks in, which means if you have more complex requests and do not want to run through 1,500 different menu entries, you have AI, which immediately understands your intent and then, of course, collects information. Maybe you can solve the problem via self-service, or you understand what is it about, whom would I need, and then of course I can use a task routing function and push the call to someone who really can help with the topic. We had a discussion up front, someone who wants to travel to Iceland. I think you need to have someone who maybe has been there and knows what's important. So you want to have the agents in place where you can connect a call through or request. And there, the technology helps as well. You were mentioning the web browser. Of course, you can have people across the world taking the call because based on their know-how and their availability. And I think this is where technology certainly helps you a lot to give the best user experience. Okay.
Leigh, maybe, because time is kind of running short, but can you give maybe some examples of where automation kind of went sour?
I'll give you the fun one, not the horrific one, but yeah, I'll definitely give you an example. We started to build out automated email journeys. Yeah, so when customers, certain behaviours would get triggered, yeah, and something would go to our site, you look at an Antarctica trip, you'd get followed up with an Antarctica FAQ. One of us, I won't name who, made the brilliant idea to, in our sandbox when we were testing it, to use all the test language as lyrics from Elton John songs. So customers, we made a mistake. So customers were lucky enough to get Hold Me Closer Tiny Dancer as one of their emails that went out. So yeah, that was a little bit of a stuff up, a fun one, and one we were able to turn around and have fun with our customers. But yeah, we made an error in the testing. We wrote the copy, and we had a delightful copy that was going to sell Antarctica and give people the best experience. But what happened was, unfortunately, due to a human error, that we sent out the copy with delightful lyrics from Elton John. The funny thing is, though, initially the conversion from the Elton John lyrics was higher than the conversion from the Antarctica email, so God knows what happens with automation. But we're able to go back and send them a funny email and get goodwill. We owned it and got back to the customers. But there is the human errors come in many shapes and forms. So yeah, that's my stuff up for the day. Yeah.
All right. Maybe we have time for one quick question from the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a very interesting question from the audience about Thomas' shoes, but we're going to skip that. There's an even more interesting question about how do you see communication evolving with the metaverse. We all heard about the metaverse, even if we didn't want to hear about the metaverse, but how do you guys, what's your take on it? Is it going to be a thing? Is it going to change communication with customers or not?
There's
really?
different opinions on that when it comes to the metaverse. I think I personally find it very interesting. I did a lot of graphics data processing at university, and I've been playing around with some Unity engines. You certainly can create something which gives a very good experience to the user. I think there are systems out, and there are, in the meantime, rendering engines where you can have an agent or an avatar appearing quite real. And I think if you combine this in the right way, you can provide very good user experience and, of course, can increase the conversion rates. I think that there already was some trials with Second Life or something like that in the second half of the 2000s, but technology was not in the place to give something which is fast and can react in real time. I think today this is possible, and I'm very curious on why this is going. Of course, I've got a personal interest in this as well, because it gives you a way better user experience. But the important piece is, it's a crutch again, you need to have opportunities or ways of integrating real-time data and then react on this. And this is something which certainly will drive the trends.
I don't have a thesis, so my answer is definitely not going to be as strong as that. My pinnacle of the internet was MySpace, so I'm probably, personally, I think there's real issues as it currently stands. I'm probably not as bullish on it. There'll be some part of metaverse in our lives in some way in the future. I don't think it'll look like bubbleheads that we currently have now, but it'll be some part, but God knows what part of it will be.
All right. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I think that's it for us. All right. Perfect. Thanks.